Hi, Yijiao Martins, licensed marriage and family therapist, couples therapist. So, in my private practice, I focus on ADHD affected relationships. And in my intake, I often hear one of the partners say, "My partner is very different from me." Um, they tend to be the partner that doesn't have ADHD or identify the non-ADHD partner. And then they point out how their partner with more ADHD show up differently in their lives. And they have some great observations of their differences. And very likely they have also read up and researched on ADHD symptoms and how that impact relationships. So they really focus on the differences. My question is often for both of the partners. Are the two of you really that different? Yes, there are some differences. I remember when I was at AGPA conferences in March in San Francisco. That's the American Group Psychotherapists Association conference. So I was in this neurodiverse process group for 2 days. So we were having group processes for 2 days straight. And the group have members identified as neurodivergent or just neurospicy. So there are folks identify on the spectrum of ADHD, on the spectrum of ASD and CPTSD, non-binary. So what really struck me was in that training in the group, most of the folks are professional group psychotherapists and have tons of experience in self-discovery and self-awareness and work. Yet it's really hard for folks to hold on to their own pain, their own neurodivergence, while giving space for other group members for their pain and their divergence. And I see there's a trend of us really wanted to compare pain. Like my pain is bigger than yours, and if you don't acknowledge my pain, then I'm not gonna acknowledge yours. Does it sound familiar? I see that all the time in my couples therapy sessions where one partner, either the identified as the ADHD partner or non-ADHD partner, saying, "This is what I'm having. This is what I'm suffering, and if you cannot see me and hold me and accommodate to me, then I'm not willing to open up my boundary to hold a space and hear you and see you and meet your needs." So they get into this stalemate situation where they're really stuck in their relationship and nobody wants to make the first move. So I wanted to really question the necessity of having a diagnosis of any sort in some way, especially when you are trying to build a system, loving relationship together. Is it really beneficial for your relationship when you're either trying to diagnose yourself or diagnose your partner or seeking a formal diagnosis? Right. In certain situations, say if you want some ADHD medication to manage your distraction and to help with mood regulation, a diagnosis is necessary if you want a prescription from a psychiatrist or primary care doctor. Um, or sometimes people want some accommodation at work, like from human resources, but that's always a tricky discussion, like how much you disclose at your job for your ADHD-ness. Sometimes it can be used against you. And also another situation is for college or school situations, the students want some accommodation in the classroom or in during tests. So that might be helpful to have some accommodation. And in that case, a diagnosis is actually very helpful. But what I'm here talking about is the medical model where either in romantic relationships, one partner trying to diagnose their partner with ADHD, or in the clinical settings when the clinician taking the position of one up, like I am the perfect, healed, normal, neurotypical person. I'm here to fix you who is neurodivergent, have this and that kind of condition. And I don't think it's very helpful. and I don't think that's good for the therapeutic alliance or for the romantic loving bond. Here's why. I don't hold a medical model. I don't believe that people have defects and need to be fixed and that they are problematic, whatever the symptoms are. Generally, the diagnosis criteria is severely impact your social, your educational, and your daily functioning and your career development. So you can already see, right? DSM-5, that's the criteria. If those symptoms are not meeting this criteria, the severity, then the diagnosis shouldn't be given, generally speaking. So the whole premise of a diagnosis is if you are able to contribute to the society, if you are able to achieve your professional or educational goals, and if you're able to be independent, and be good enough in a relationship that people think that you're normal enough that can be accepted. So that is a different premise from the neurodivergence lens, where everybody is somewhere on the spectrum, right? Our brains are all different, that one can have traits of ADHD, autistic spectrum disorder, CPTSD, complex trauma, narcissist personality traits, borderline personality traits, and all of those, because those alter our brain and how we perceive the world and how we interact with our environment. So in some way, everybody is this unique combination of a neural spiciness. That's why this world is so interesting, right? That's why learning about the other person and spending time with the other person for the rest of our life is never boring. Well, we like to assume that person doesn't change, but you probably know this depends on what we eat and our daily functioning schedule and environment. Our cell keeps dying and reborn, and then we keep changing. We're never the same, and within 21 days, we could be a totally different being. And the same for our brain. Yes, with age, we have more rigidity in the brain. We are not as plastic, and it's harder to change our brain. And that's why it's important to challenge ourselves and continue to learn and grow. But your partner is never the same, and you are never the same. So we're all fluid and dynamic on the spectrum that we can shift our own neurodivergence in some way. Personally, I've done 20 something years of work on myself, and I have changed drastically. I'm like a totally different person from 21 years ago when I entered graduate school. But there's something that still stayed true to me is I'm a sensory person. So ever since I was a child, I was very sensitive to certain light, like the LED light. It really bothers me in office buildings. And also I'm sensitive to noises in general, especially the erratic, sudden noise that startles me. And I also don't like certain kind of touch. So mostly also irregular and unpredicted touch, being bumped into and shuffled into. And you can imagine growing up in China is very hard for me. If you've been to Chinatown in San Francisco, you can have a taste of what's it like to be in China. And day in, day out, there is such a variety of loud noise all the time, and people bump into each other constantly in the subway. You get squished and like a kind of sardines. And so anyway, so Costco is my nightmare. And how I make accommodation to myself is as soon as I have enough income, I decided to use Instacart. This is not an advertisement. Instacart or any kind of other delivery service, so I can avoid a trip. I'm very grateful for workers who are not bothered by Costco that gather those goods for me and deliver to my door, so I can focus on my energy and my time for my family, my children, my work, my clients, and stay regulated, because that's a 3-hour trip generally for me, and I will spend another hour to compress and get regulated again. And I tend to get very frustrated and irritable when I'm at Costco. And at first I did not know why. I thought I was just a snappy person. Then I realized, oh, I'm actually neurodivergent. And because of my neurodivergence, that I can attune, I can pick up some nuances and cues that other people can't. And a lot of my therapist friends complain about Zoom sessions, and they said, it's not the same, it's not the same. For me, actually, no. I can pick up any subtle facial expressions and posture change and cues, even breathing patterns and energy level excitation change. Eye contact, all of those things I can't even describe to you. But no problem over Zoom, and actually can feel the sadness when my client feels sad even before they start to feel sad. And because I'm so attuned to my body, like I can pick up those somatic countertransferences, and I can check in with them, and they often feel amazed at, how did you see this? How can you track that? That's because of my neurodivergence. So it's a great profession for me that I can have that capacity to attune and to see where people's struggles are. And I have also this magic perception to integrate all the data I gather from intakes and interviews and process in my system, and then get to the core of the issue very quickly within sessions. Um, so I work speedily and efficiently in that way. But because of my neurodivergence, because of my sensitivity, I cannot overload myself with too many clients. Otherwise, I get dysregulated, I get overloaded, then I'm not efficient anymore. So here's the perks, and there's the, also the not that good traits about my brain, and as I learn over the years, and that's how I operate, and I value and cherish my neurodivergence and my capacity and my incapacity. So I wonder, what kind of neurodivergence do you see in yourself? I'm not asking about your partners, because you probably know it really well at this point. You probably has complained and pointed out so many times to them what their little quirks are. May that be forgetfulness and disorganization, time blindness, hyper focusing, or easily distracted, or mood dysregulation, or sensitive to rejection. All of those are neurodivergence, and they could be part of the ADHD symptoms or ASD or other things. So in some way, the diagnosis doesn't really matter, right? Unless you want an insurance claim, you get reimbursed. What's the real point of diagnose someone and put them in a box? And what's the purpose of you having that? Some people really wanted to know, so they feel like they belong to certain subgroups, and there's a sense of safety and reassurance, right? But I don't think anybody particularly like it when other people do it to them. All right, so you may want to ask your partner's permission and feelings and thoughts about being diagnosed, or when you were trying to implying they have a certain diagnosis. Instead, I invite you to look at your own self, your own uniqueness, and look at your difference from your partner's brain as an asset. I often get referrals for clients who are a couple that's neurodivergent, neurotypical, whatever, how you define it. And then also with racial ethnicity differences, and sometimes also age differences, and sometimes gender differences. So I often just frame those differences for them when they have more than three. I said, this is a very interesting dynamic you have. You have so many differences, which make your relationship very exciting. Very unlikely you'll be bored with each other soon. And it also creates certain challenges. That means you have more differences to integrate, and that requires more work and energy for you to build your system. So I wonder, what are your differences between you and your partner? And what are the accommodations that you can make for yourself and your partner? And what are your needs that you would really like to be um, considered and heard? Can you even go deeper to talk about your needs? And maybe there are some emotions, around that. For a while, I had a critical part of myself for not being able to shop in Costco like a regular mom. And there's a part of me saying, oh, you're wasting money, right? Why can't you just go like other people, right? Why can't you just enjoy that? Then I realized I'm just different. And there are also other things I'm so good at and I enjoy doing and other people might not like. And that's okay. Like, I'm a very organized and detail-oriented person, and I love organizing things and to make things in good order and easy to find. And then that generally is not a good like a perk for partners with ADHD, right? In that sense, that make us a very good pair. Um, if we agree consciously that's what we're gonna do for each other, accommodate to each other, that might be a very good trade, and that will make the system work more efficiently and our bond stronger. Okay, so would you have a conversation or a series of conversations with your partner and see what each of your uniqueness are, and maybe have an understanding of where they're coming from? What are your particular needs around that? And can you ask for commendation? Be creative to find solutions for either your challenges, or sometimes it's not a challenge, right? Sometimes it's just something fun to share your quirkiness. All right, thank you for viewing, my friends. I'll see you next week.